September 26, 2011. Almocajeme, Portugal, a whitewashed fishing village on the Sintra coast. Police move in on a 68-year-old man his neighbors adore, the friendly chef who runs the village barbecue. His name, everyone knows, is Jorge. His fingerprint says something else. It says George Wright, and it matches a New Jersey prison card from 1963, a piece of paper that has waited 48 years for this moment. The FBI declares victory in a manhunt that has outlasted the careers of every agent who ever touched it. 41 years, 3 continents, over. In New Jersey, a woman named Ann Patterson gets a phone call she's been waiting on for 49 years. Since she was a teenager, since the night her father didn't come home, the system won. Every agency that hunts people finally got its man. Except it didn't, because a court is about to tell the FBI something almost impossible to process. The manhunt had been over for 2 decades. They just didn't know it. He hadn't outrun them. He'd become someone they're not allowed to touch. Before this story ends, you'll see a priest's collar hiding a fugitive, a hollowed-out Bible, federal agents stripped to swim trunks carrying $1 million across a runway, and a lawyer walking into court with 2 pieces of paper that beat the United States of America. How does one man escape every agency that exists to catch people? And why did catching him change nothing? To understand how a barbecue chef beat a superpower, you have to start with a debt. Thanksgiving weekend, 1962. The law priced it at 30 years. Wall Township, New Jersey. November 1962. 2 nights after Thanksgiving, 4 young men are working their way through a string of robberies. A motel first, then a gas station on Route 33. Behind the counter is Walter Patterson, World War II veteran. The Army pinned a bronze star on him for valor, and tonight that medal sits in a drawer at home while the man who earned it counts out change at a Route 33 register on a holiday weekend. Because there are 2 daughters in that house, and daughters need things. During the robbery, an accomplice named McGee, not Wright, shoots him. Walter Patterson dies of his wounds 2 days later. A man a world war couldn't kill, gone for the contents of a cash drawer. Those daughters will come back into this story. When they do, they'll be carrying its final argument. George Wright is 19 years old. He didn't pull the trigger, but under felony murder law, that distinction barely matters. Everyone on the job owns the death. He pleads no contest and takes 15 to 30 years. The state of New Jersey processes him into the system, and somewhere in that intake routine, a clerk rolls his thumb across an ink pad and presses it onto a card. Black ink, standard form. One of thousands filed that year. That card is dated 1963. Remember it. It will sit silent in a drawer for 48 years, and when it finally speaks, it will end everything. For 8 years, the story goes exactly the way the state expects. Wright serves his time at Bayside State Prison in Leesburg, a minimum security farm facility in southern New Jersey, and the debt gets paid down year by year, season by season, the case effectively closed and just waiting for the paperwork to catch up. Then comes August 1970. One night, between bed checks, 4 inmates simply walk off the prison farm. Out through the dark, on foot, unhurried, as if the fences were a suggestion. By morning count, there are 4 empty bunks and 1 detail that turns an escape into an omen. The getaway vehicle was the warden's own car, taken from the prison grounds. The institution built to hold George Wright didn't just lose him, it drove him out its own gate. That's agency number 1, the New Jersey prison system, beaten with its own keys. Scoreboard 1. At this point, George Wright is a 26-year-old escaped convict with empty pockets, no papers, and every police department on the East Coast holding his photograph. A man in that position has maybe 3 moves, all of them bad: hide in a city, run to family and get caught, or stay small and invisible forever. Wright chooses a 4th option that isn't on anyone's list. That priest's collar from the opening? It's about to become a boarding pass. 2 years after walking off a prison farm, this penniless fugitive will carry a loaded pistol onto a commercial jetliner inside the pages of a Bible, and he'll make the FBI participate in their own humiliation, in front of cameras, by their own rules. Detroit, 1972. Wright has spent his 2 years underground inside the orbit of the Black Liberation Army, and for a fugitive with his profile, that connection matters for one practical reason above all others. The BLA has a destination: Algeria. No extradition to the United States. A government that has been receiving self-declared American revolutionaries. For most people, Algeria might as well be the moon. You can't fly there without a passport, and Wright's face hangs in FBI field offices across the country. So he doesn't book a flight to Algeria. He decides to take one there. July 31st, 1972. Detroit Metropolitan Airport. A man in a black suit and white clerical collar crosses the terminal, calm and unhurried, a Bible in one hand and a ticket in the name of Reverend Larry Burgess in the other, and nobody looks twice because a priest's collar repels suspicion before it can even form. Security waves him through. Delta Flight 841, bound for Miami. 4 associates scattered through the cabin. A working flight crew, 86 passengers living through an ordinary Monday. Somewhere over the Midwest, the Bible opens. The pages have been hollowed out around a pistol, a detail so cinematic it sounds invented, except the FBI's own account of the case describes exactly this. The Reverend stands. A flight attendant turns her head. Half a second. That's the whole window. The black suit stops meaning comfort. Coffee goes cold on tray tables. Reverend Larry Burgess ceases to exist somewhere over the heartland, and 86 strangers watch a soft-spoken man of God level a gun that came out of Scripture. The hijackers aren't improvising. Wheels down in Florida, the demand comes through. And it's a number built for headlines. $1 million. In 1972, the largest ransom demand in the history of American aviation. But it's the second demand that turns this from a crime into a legend. The hijackers know exactly how ransom deliveries go wrong. An agent walks up with a suitcase in one hand and a concealed weapon somewhere else, and the exchange becomes an ambush. So they attach a condition. The money will be delivered by FBI agents, wearing only swim trunks. No jacket to hide a holster, no shoes to tuck a revolver into, skin, sun, money. The Bureau has no good exit. Its own hostage doctrine says what it has always said. Preserve life first. 86 passengers are sweating through a July afternoon with a gun in the cabin. Negotiators stall. Supervisors argue. The clock wins. It happens. Broad daylight. A Miami tarmac shimmering with heat. Agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation walk toward a hijacked jetliner wearing swim trunks and nothing else, $1 million in hand, while an Associated Press photographer stands close enough to catch every step. Which is why the picture exists, and you can find it today. The most powerful law enforcement agency on Earth, stripped, delivering ransom, marched across that asphalt by its own protocol. That's agency number 2, the FBI, beaten with its own rulebook on film. Scoreboard. 2. The 86 hostages walk off the plane in Miami, unharmed. That part of the bargain is kept. Then Flight 841 lifts off again with its crew and its $1 million, refuels in Boston where a navigator joins the flight for the ocean crossing, and turns east into the night. A Delta jet hijacked by 5 people and a hollow Bible, crossing the Atlantic in darkness while the American government watches the blip crawl across its radar, powerless. Wheels down, Algiers, out of American jurisdiction, out of American reach, $1 million richer, in a country that will not send them back. On paper, a perfect crime. It will last less than 48 hours. The revolutionary sanctuary waiting at the bottom of the air stair has plans of its own, and within a month, Wright will not have a single dollar to his name. The men and women who step off that plane into the North African heat believe they're arriving at the promised land. Eldridge Cleaver's international section of the Black Panthers operates openly in Algeria. The government has sheltered American radicals before. In the mythology of 1972, Algiers is the one place on Earth where the reach of the United States simply ends. The mythology survives contact with reality for about 2 days, because the government of Houari Boumediene looks at this situation and sees something very different from a revolutionary triumph. It sees a diplomatic problem with $1 million price tag attached. Algeria may enjoy tweaking the Americans, but it also sells oil and gas into a world the Americans dominate. And a hijacked commercial jet is not a trophy any government wants on its books. So Algeria impounds the plane, then the money, soldiers, polite in manner, immovable in fact, relieve the revolutionaries of every last dollar. The suitcase that humiliated the FBI in Miami is now a line item in someone else's foreign policy. Within a month, Algeria ships all of it back to the United States, the aircraft, the full $1 million. A Time magazine bureau chief witnesses the handover. Cleaver's faction publicly demands the money be turned over to the movement. The demand goes nowhere. The asylum they assumed was waiting is never formalized. In Algiers, the hijackers are leverage, assets on a shelf, held by a government that will trade them the moment the price is right. Add it up. $1 million demanded at gunpoint, paid in full, planned for months and executed to the letter. And Wright's cut, once the soldiers finish counting, is nothing. $0. He never keeps a cent. Whatever you think of him, know this before the story goes any further. He spent none of that money and never once tried to get it back. Every risk he took bought exactly one thing: distance. Which makes what he does next easier to understand. Broke, watched by Algerian security, and living as a bargaining chip in someone else's diplomacy, Wright and the others slip out of their sanctuary on false papers and make their way toward Europe, toward France. Algeria kept the million, but the trade it was holding out for, 5 hijackers exchanged at the right diplomatic price, never happens because the merchandise walks out the door before anyone can close the deal. That's agency number 3. Algerian state security sidestepped with the oldest move in Wright's playbook. Leave before they decide what to do with you. Scoreboard 3. For 4 years, the crew holds it together in Paris, underground, undocumented, hunted on 2 continents. Borrowed rooms, glances over shoulders, and all that time, invisibly, their luck is draining away like sand through a glass. In 1976, the net lands. French police, working the case with American investigators, sweep up the fugitives of Flight 841 in Paris. 4 hijackers, 1 coordinated operation. After 4 years, the United States has them. Except, count the chairs. 5 people took that plane. 1 chair is empty. 4 hijackers in French custody. Washington files its extradition papers and waits for the machinery of Allied justice to deliver its prisoners. France says no. The French courts see a political dimension the Americans refuse to acknowledge, and under French law, that's enough to deny extradition. If the fugitives are to be tried, France will try them itself, under its own code, in its own courtrooms. And when those trials come, French justice weighs what it calls extenuating circumstances, and the sentences land soft by American standards. The women walk free outright. The men serve terms short enough that by 1981, they're out. The McNairs, 2 of the hijackers, settle in Normandy and spend the next decades running local youth programs. Air pirates on an American indictment. The couple every parent in town trusts with their kids by French daylight. An ally of the United States looked at America's most wanted hijackers and declined to hand them over. That's agency number 4, French justice, asked politely in writing, and it said no. Scoreboard 4. Hold on to that number. It's going to start climbing again decades from now. In a courtroom nobody, not the FBI, not Wright himself, could possibly predict. But for the Bureau, the French trials are almost a footnote next to the real problem. Because when investigators debrief, interrogate, and reconstruct, they hit a wall that turns this case into legend. George Wright wasn't in Paris when the net landed. He'd split before the arrests, cleanly, completely, without a forwarding shadow. His own crew, facing trial, with every reason to trade information for mercy, cannot say where he went. They have no idea. The trail, as the FBI reconstructed it. New Jersey, 1970. Detroit, 1972. Algiers, 1972. Paris, gone by 1976. Then nothing. Trails go cold. This one ceased to exist. For years, then decades, the file on George Wright hardens into Bureau legend. The last hijacker of Delta 841 still at large, the man who evaporated. So ask the question every agent on that case asked. How do you hunt a ghost? Deeper cover, presumably. A hole somewhere remote, a false name, a locked door, a man growing old in the dark, flinching at every knock. That's what the manual says. That's what every fugitive in history has done. George Wright did the one thing no manual prepares a hunter for. He stopped hiding. For roughly a decade, the FBI's vanished hijacker lives openly in West Africa under his own name, George Wright. And he doesn't just live there. In Guinea-Bissau, he becomes a respected NGO logistics man, moving through the small country's expatriate circles, the same circles as American diplomats. The ghost the Bureau is hunting is trading handshakes at receptions where the guest list includes the United States ambassador. The FBI is searching the shadows. Their man is standing in the light, wearing a name tag, shaking American hands. How is that possible? Because Wright understood something about manhunts that the people running them took decades to learn. Databases don't cross oceans on their own. In the 1980s, a name in a New Jersey warrant and a name on a guest list in Guinea-Bissau live in two different universes. Nothing connects them, and in 1985, nothing can. Visibility in the wrong country is a better disguise than darkness in the right one. But living in plain sight is only step one. What Wright builds next is the masterpiece, and he builds it slowly, patiently, one legal document at a time. In Guinea-Bissau, he acquires papers under a new name, José Luis Jorge dos Santos. Then, the name acquires a life. He meets a Portuguese woman, Maria do Rosario. The fugitive's manual is clear on this point. Marry for the passport, then disappear. Wright marries her and stays through 2 children, stays through 21 years of shared mornings. Until the day the police come, she is still the woman he wakes up next to. They marry around 1990, and through that marriage, in about 1991, José Luis Jorge dos Santos is granted citizenship of Portugal. That citizenship certificate, stamped, sealed, filed away in a Lisbon registry, looks like paperwork. It's a landmine on a 20-year fuse, and nobody, not Wright's family, not the FBI, maybe not even Wright himself, understands what it's armed to do. Not yet. By 1993, the family settles into a cottage in Almocajeme, the fishing village on the Sintra coast where this story began. And here the fugitive simply dissolves into a life, working the door at a nightclub, selling crafts to beachgoers, becoming, year by year, the man the whole village knows. Jorge, the chef with the barbecue chicken, smoke rising off the grill at every village festival, the guy who remembers your kids' names, 2 children of his own who know nothing, a wife who once heard him mention an American prison and waved it off as a tall tale. Because who looks at the gentle village grill cook and believes he hijacked a jetliner? His neighbors loved him. Genuinely, the way a village loves the man who has grilled its festival chicken for 20 years. None of that excuses 1962. It's simply a fact of what he became, and the final act of this story runs straight through it. Because 2 clocks are ticking that no one can hear. The first is that citizenship paper waiting in its file, and the second, under a Portuguese law that nobody in Washington is reading, every single year that passes is quietly doing something. Every calendar page from 1970 onward is being counted, somewhere, by a legal mechanism aimed at a date nobody has circled yet. Then the world changes. Early 2000s. A cold case task force involving the U.S. Marshals and the FBI reopens dormant fugitive files with tools that didn't exist when Wright vanished. Linked databases, biometric matching, digitized records, phone metadata. Old ink cards are being scanned into computers, one by one, by the thousand. The math of hiding collapses. A world with computerized fingerprints is a world where a 1963 ink card can suddenly talk to a document 5,000 kilometers away. The hunter is different now, a system that never sleeps and never forgets. And the first thread it pulls is in New Jersey, of all places, on his sister's phone bill. Every long escape has the same weak point. You can burn your name, your country, your face, your past. You cannot burn love. After 4 decades, George Wright was still, somewhere underneath Jorge, a brother. Investigators working the reopened case grind through the connections around Wright's family and calls linked to his sister's phone trace overseas. To Portugal, a direction, not yet proof. The task force starts pulling Portuguese records, Portuguese photographs, Portuguese lives that began, curiously, in the early 1990s. According to sworn testimony from an FBI agent on the case, they had a photographic match as early as 2010, a face in Almocajeme that lined up with a prison photo from another lifetime. Still not enough. Faces age, lawyers argue, they need something that doesn't age. And that's when Wright's masterpiece betrays him. His Portuguese identity was flawless. A real marriage, real children, real citizenship, a real name used for real decades. But identity papers carry a fingerprint, And a fingerprint was the one thing José Luis Jorge dos Santos could never invent. The thumb pressed onto his Portuguese ID card was the same thumb a New Jersey clerk had inked onto a prison card in 1963. Every other fact on his documents was a beautiful fabrication. His thumb was the one true thing he carried for 48 years, and it never stopped telling the truth. The 1963 card and the Portuguese ID meet in a database. They match. September 26, 2011. The scene from the top of this story, playing again. From both sides this time. The arrest takes minutes. Portuguese police close on a 68-year-old man in the salt and charcoal morning air. Neighbors stand in doorways. Nobody shouts. The friendly chef, a wife, 2 grown children, a lifetime of church festivals and grilled chicken, walks to an unmarked car with his wrists behind his back. A manhunt older than most of the agents' careers, closed on the strength of a thumbprint older still. In New Jersey, a phone rings. Ann Patterson was a teenager the night her father didn't come home from the Route 33 register. She is in her 60s now, and for 49 years, through the escape, the hijacking, the French trials, through every decade the file sat dead in a drawer. She has answered ringing phones, and not one of them, not once in half a century, was ever this one. She picks up, grips the receiver, a stranger's voice. 3 sentences. We have him. He's alive. He's in custody. 49 years of waiting. 10 seconds to say. The FBI announces the capture of George Wright. Extradition is filed. American officials describe the hearing ahead as essentially a formality. The system won. Every year of those 41 was just delay. Then Wright's lawyer walks into that formality carrying 2 pieces of paper. One is a citizenship certificate. The other, in effect, is a calendar. And the United States begins losing the case it already won. Picture the room where the formality is supposed to happen. A Lisbon courtroom, autumn 2011. On one side, the full weight of an American extradition request 4 decades in the making. Prosecutors, diplomats, a case file that has outlived most of the men who opened it. On the other side, a gray-haired man from a fishing village and a lawyer holding a folder so thin it looks like an insult. Paper number 1 comes out. The citizenship certificate, filed away in 1991, 20 years before anyone needed it. Portugal, like much of Europe, does not surrender its own citizens to foreign powers. Not for hijacking, not for felony murder, not for a superpower carrying a 40-year grudge. And the man in front of the judges qualifies. José Luis Jorge dos Santos is real. Lawfully naturalized, through a real marriage, 2 decades before his arrest. The identity the FBI spent years unmasking as a disguise turns out to be armor. Legally forged, legally worn, legally impenetrable. November 17, 2011. The Lisbon Court of Appeal rules. Extradition refused. That's number 5. The United States Department of Justice. 4 decades of case file, turned away by an allied court in a single ruling. Scoreboard, 5. In New Jersey, Ann Patterson learns what refused means. 49 years of waiting bought her 7 weeks of believing the system had finally worked. 7 weeks. Portuguese winter, early 2012. The case breathes. In Washington, lawyers draft an appeal, hunting for a route back to the 1962 conviction. Outside Lisbon, an old chef waits in custody while 2 countries argue over which one owns his past. Then, in that same Lisbon courtroom, paper number 2 comes out, and it detonates. The calendar. Under Portuguese law, old sentences expire. A statute of limitations runs on them, year after year, until they're unenforceable. Wright's conviction, 1963. His escape, 1970. Now do the math the way his lawyer does it. Out loud, in court, 1975, 1985, 1995, 2005. Every year the FBI added to its manhunt. Portuguese law was quietly adding to a different total, which means 41 years of chasing were, at the same time, 41 years of legal ammunition stacking up on Wright's side of the ledger. By the time the handcuffs closed in Almacajam, the sentence inside them was already dead. Think about what that means. Somewhere in the years before that arrest, quietly, on paper, while nobody in Washington was reading the one law that decided everything, this manhunt stopped being winnable. Agents kept flying, files kept moving. The prize had already expired. 1 door left. And here the story goes very quiet because the door is small. Under Portuguese procedure, exactly one party on earth has standing to appeal the ruling. Not Washington, not the victim's family. Portugal's own public prosecutor. One office, one signature. The entire weight of the American case now hangs on what a single Portuguese lawyer decides to write. The prosecutor sides with Wright. The state's own attorney reads the citizenship file, reads the expired sentence, and puts it in writing. The ruling is correct. The American appeal dies for lack of standing. Killed from inside the courthouse. That's number 6. American diplomacy. Out of moves. Its last argument signed away by the only lawyer allowed to make it. Scoreboard 6. Now everything accelerates because only one deadline remains. February 29, 2012, Leap Day, a date that exists once every 4 years. The last day the United States can escalate, contest, keep the file alive. The date arrives. Washington files nothing. That's number 7. Washington itself, a superpower, quitting in writing by missing a due date. Scoreboard 7 final. The case closes, permanently. 5 decades, 3 continents, 7 defeats, and the ending is a blank space on a docket where America's signature should be. Every agency that ever touched this file, undone by its own rules. At the top of this story, I told you George Wright had become someone they're not allowed to touch. Now you can put a date on the moment it happened. The great escape of this saga wasn't the prison farm in 1970 or the hijacked jet in 1972. It was a clerk's stamp landing on a naturalization file in a Lisbon registry around 1991, an ordinary morning's administration that nobody photographed and nobody recognized for what it was. Possibly not even Wright. From that stamp forward, the FBI spent 20 more years and untold millions hunting a man who had already crossed the only border that ever mattered, the one between fugitive and citizen. The Bureau got its arrest. Portugal kept its citizen. 41 years of chasing, and the total time George Wright spent in American custody afterward comes to 0 days. If the story ended there, it would almost be a caper. It doesn't end there. There is another half to this ending, and it lives in New Jersey. In 2012, Ann Patterson goes before Congress and tells them about her father, Walter Patterson, Bronze Star, Route 33. She tells them how his killers were caught and escaped and fled and were freed one after another by one legal system after another. Lawmakers propose a bill in her father's name, meant to tighten the machinery that failed her family across 5 decades. The bill dies in committee. It never reaches a vote. The system that couldn't hold her father's killer couldn't pass his memorial either. Wright, by then untouchable, records an apology to the Patterson family, an old man's voice on tape telling the daughters of the man his crew killed, "I'm sorry for what happened to your father." Ann Patterson plays it through to the end. Every word, from a man she has never met, about a night she has never escaped. Then she goes on television and gives her answer. He's not sorry. He's sorry he was caught. An apology costs something only when the speaker has something to lose. Wright recorded his after Lisbon made him untouchable. He was safe when he said it. That was the part she could not get past. The final image. An old man in his 80s on the Sintra coast, where the Atlantic light bleaches every wall, grilling chicken at festivals, hearing his grandchildren laugh. The FBI still lists him. The file is closed. But the Bureau still knows exactly which village, which street, which door. They can see him. They will always be able to see him. They are never allowed to have him. Caught and uncatchable. Guilty and free. A dead war hero, a daughter the system failed twice, and a fugitive who beat every agency on Earth without firing a shot at any of them. So, after 41 years, who actually won? The Bureau got its identification. Portugal kept its citizen. Ann Patterson got a phone call and an apology and nothing else. That verdict belongs to you. Leave it in the comments. Half of you are about to disagree with the other half. And if one man beating every agency with paperwork sounds like the strangest escape ever pulled, there's another fugitive who made 3 governments look like amateurs the modern way, with yachts, fake heart attacks, and a Twitter account taunting the FBI. His story ends far darker. Watch The Man Who Outsmarted Every Agency next.